Today on the EOR podcast, our guest is Esther Avant, a health and mindset coach who's helped thousands of women ditch all or nothing thinking and take back control of their bodies and their lives. She's the founder of EA Coaching, a Navy veteran, a mom, and the host of the Live Diet Free podcast, where she challenges the toxic narratives of the fitness industry and replaces them with real, sustainable strategies that actually work. Esther's not here for quick fixes. She's here for lifelong transformation, and today, she's going to show us how effort, not perfection, is the real path to results. Esther Avant, welcome to the EOR podcast. Let's go. Esther Avant, welcome to the EOR podcast. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. I'm excited to have another podcast that revolves around health and nutrition and wellness. The EOR philosophy, I mean, it's about effort, but it's also about wellness and self-care. And it's about how leadership and leaders need to take care of themselves before they can truly be their best for others. And when I say leaders, that could be not only in business, that could be teachers in a classroom, it could be coaches on a field, it could be parents to their children, anywhere where you're trying to help others grow and get better. And that's really what EOR leadership is all about. And so I like to have podcast guests that reflect all elements of being a better you. And so health and nutrition is something that I've really geeked out on in the last 4 to 5 years. I fell in love with Andrew Huberman and Peter Attia and a lot of the nutrition and fitness people online. And I've got my protocols, I did my cold plunge today, which is good. But I want to talk to you about nutrition and wellness and the philosophy that you bring to your health, obviously the book and the podcast. But let's talk about your beginnings. So you've been in this space for nearly 2 decades. So what first drew you into this industry?
Selfishly, I just wanted to get paid to work out. I found the gym when I was in high school and just loved the changes I saw as a result and the confidence that I built. And it was during that influential time where you're looking at colleges and picking majors, and I figured I went to school for exercise science with the goal being I will work in a gym and then I'll be able to work out all day. Sort of what happened. I started personal training when I was in college and working in a commercial gym as soon as I graduated. I had a lot of time to watch people work out, but a lot less time to do it myself. And it's just kind of evolved from there. As working with my first in-person clients, I realized I needed to be able to talk more about nutrition, that it's such a big piece of the puzzle, that I had all these clients who were working hard, the 60 minutes a week we were together, and then were frustrated that they felt like nothing was changing. Yeah. So I started pursuing nutrition certifications and internships. And in this time, I was also kind of struggling myself with being obsessive, with not striking a healthy balance, with having a hard time kind of implementing the science that I knew. And that's what led me to really kind of a passion for understanding human behavior and specifically behavior change, how we take the textbook knowledge and actually implement it in our dynamic lives. That's what interests me the most, because there's no lack of information out there. Right. If anything, there's too much of it and Right. We're overwhelmed by it, so we do nothing. So how do we distill it down to what matters the most? And then how do we take those and figure out what they look like in our lives to help us reach our unique goals?
Yeah, I imagine besides being a practitioner like yourself in an industry where there are thousands of people who, claim to be fitness experts, nutrition and health experts, and like you said, there's just too much information out there. How do you separate yourself in your approach? But then also, how do your clients or just people, in general, like myself, try to wade through all that information and really what is the best fit?
It's really hard to wade through information and kind of check the validity of things that you don't really have a background in. I am fortunate that I understand this piece of our lives. So I'm pretty good at discerning kind of the snake oil from everything else. But I think about other aspects of my life. I don't know the first thing about financial stuff, investments and cryptocurrency and things like that. And I look at social media and I wonder, is this person trustworthy? Should I believe what they're saying? They have a lot of followers? Is that something that I should, take as a positive, or is that a negative? And it just all feels really overwhelming. So I think part of what has helped me separate myself is through the podcast, having an opportunity to have the more nuanced conversations, because social media is so quick and it has to be so catchy and so polarizing and so kind of black and white,
Mhm.
that the people that you see who are sort of talking the loudest and it feels like their voices are amplified are usually the ones on with some sort of extreme take.
Mhm.
But the reality of it is, with a lot of this stuff, it depends on a lot of different things. And that's not a sexy thing to be talking about on social media. That's not a good, TikTok or a short to say, well, it's nuanced. So I think the podcast has really helped me have those more in-depth conversations where I can help people understand these are decisions that you need to take seriously, or you need to make for yourself, or you need to experiment. And that has helped people see that when they work with me, I'm not going to force them into a dogma that I happen to follow. I'm going to help them figure out what works for them. And I think that's what most people need, is something less prescriptive and more understanding of their lives as a whole, to say what we're really doing here is helping you build skills and help you utilize the tools at your fingertips so that you can continue to do those things going forward as your life continues to change. So it's not, this is a one time set and forget, this is how you're always going to do things. More so, I'm developing the skill set that I need to know that as my health, as my job, as my family change in the future, I have what it takes to change with them.
Mhm. So, in your work with your clients, what do you think is the biggest misconception that your clients have, say, coming into those first meetings with you, and, some of the things they're expressing as to their beliefs about nutrition that I don't want to say that you're horrified by, but I'm sure you've had those moments. What is the trend that you're seeing from people about nutrition, about their health, the myths that they might be, believing in, maybe even some of the messaging that is out there? Because obviously there's a lot of propaganda too. So, what do you see when you meet with clients for the first time and you're interviewing them about their current nutrition habits, that they're now letting you know about what their belief system is about that particular area of their lives?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. I think it's that people have really strong beliefs that they may not even realize they have, and they want someone to validate them. I was just
Mhm.
giving a talk at our local library, and I was just mingling with people beforehand, and several of the attendees would say something along the lines of, "Oh, I had juice this morning. I know that's so bad for me. I shouldn't be drinking that." Or, "I brought this for lunch today. That's healthy, right?" And it just feels like almost everybody has this very black and white attitude
Mhm.
towards nutrition, that there are certain foods that are good, there are certain foods that are bad, and I'm looking for somebody to tell me that I've categorized everything correctly. And it's often a little bit frustrating to have that kind of be the introduction to someone, where I'm not the person that's gonna validate that. I'm not gonna tell you no to your face, like, oh, you should never eat that, or you're silly for thinking that. But to just recognize that so many people have such deeply rooted beliefs that food is so moral, I think that's kind of the place that we're starting from, is understanding that the things that are going viral on social media probably have a kernel of truth that has been spun into this much bigger thing. And the reality of it is, you get to decide for yourself which foods have a role in your life and to what capacity, and nothing needs to be off limits, and you don't even really need to be thinking in terms of this is bad or this is good. Everything just kind of exists on a spectrum. Some things are more nutrient dense than others, but you're going to feel so much freedom when
Mhm.
you're no longer attaching morality to the food. And I think that's one of the big kind of topics to tackle with people early on.
Mhm. Tell me if based on what you just said, tell me if you think this statement is true, that people's eating habits, their nutrition habits are largely psychologically based. And what I mean by that is For some people, well, a lot of people, food it's a comfort thing. We call it comfort food for a reason. Maybe it's a childhood trauma thing. It's the way they were fed and the nutrition that they received in their homes when they were growing up. It's, their current stress levels. So I realize I kind of unpacked a few bags there, but how much is psychology and food related to people's current habits?
Huge, the majority with all of this. That's what's so interesting is, in my book, I had this visual of a triangle with three layers, and the exercise and nutrition kind of science is the tip of that pyramid. And the psychological stuff is the base that we don't even realize that the reason we think certain things or do certain things is because of exactly what you said, something that happened in our childhood, just something that we've picked up along the way. So much less of it is the nutrition science of these are the most nutrient dense foods on the planet. They should make up the majority of your diet. Nobody's eating like that. We're eating based on emotion and often convenience and things like that. But that is the meat and potatoes of the work that people have to do is between the ears. It's not another list of foods that are high in protein or high in fiber. It's better understanding, why do I make the choices that I do? What has led me to have these beliefs? Starting to question the beliefs that we've just taken as fact for years.
So tell me if this statement is true. Good food and healthy food, whole food, is not cheap. What would you say to
Uh,
that?
Yeah, I would say that's largely true.
Okay.
The highly processed, hyper palatable snack foods that are at every checkout aisle in our
Mm.
grocery stores and things like that are much cheaper and more readily available for most people than fresh, whole, nutrient dense foods. I mean, I'm fortunate, and I would imagine most of our listeners today are very fortunate in the grand scheme of things that you
Yeah.
have a device to listen to a podcast on. You're probably in a first world country. You probably have access to plentiful grocery stores and things like that. There's so many people, even in, North America, who live in these food deserts where they just don't have access to those foods. So yeah, it is certainly a big factor. And a lot of people would like to eat a more nutritious diet and have bigger obstacles in doing that than we realize.
I find it interesting, and I brought this up on a different podcast a couple weeks ago with a different nutrition specialist, and I said that, my generation, you're much younger than I am, but my generation, we grew up, and that's Gen X. We grew up in households where our grandparents, my grandmother taught me how to cook, like just simple little things. There was that parental or grandparental guidance in terms of, the meals that you made, because, back in the 1900s, the 1970s and 80s, things were not ready made. Like the ready-made super processed foods that literally has a shelf life of, a year just weren't readily available. It was really in the 1980s that started to change. But do you think generationally that has affected the way we eat now? Because I'll give this as an example, Esther. Um, and this is certainly no slight to my wife, but there wasn't a lot of time, where me or my wife were spending time in the kitchen teaching our kids how to cook. They just expected a meal on the table. And I found that Gen Z, so those that are 25, between the ages, I think it's between the ages of like 18 and 28, um, are doing a lot of ordering in because it's easy.
Mm.
They're not making their own meals because they can literally press three buttons and it's at their door in 30 minutes. That wasn't available to us when we were younger. So, how has that changed the way people are eating? And what have you seen in the younger generation today? Are they eating well, or do you find that it's continuing to get worse?
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought much about that, but growing up, I had a parent in the house who cooked nutritious meals. And even though I didn't get or wasn't necessarily interested in cooking lessons, at least that behavior was modeled for me. I saw the time it took and the effort that goes into cooking. So when I did develop a desire to learn for myself, I could at least visualize myself in the kitchen doing those things. So it's really interesting to think about a generation whose parents aren't cooking. So most meals are delivered, takeout, that sort of thing. then not only are they not developing the skills themselves, but they don't even really have that visual to say, well,
Mm,
there's an alternative to this. So something I've tried to do with now I cook almost all of our meals, and I've sort of, I wouldn't say I'm a great cook, but I'm, a self-taught. I can keep us sustained, and
yeah,
I try to involve my 6-year-old now in it, just basic food skills. I think there's a lot of life skills that we don't get taught in school that as parents it would behoove us to teach our kids,
yeah,
and cooking is one of them to eventually be an adult who can feed himself. But that's really interesting. And I would imagine if, I mean, just generally speaking, the food that most people, especially kids, are ordering for themselves or getting at restaurants is probably not very nutritious. I know,
yeah,
you're probably, when a friend gets a license, you're swinging through a drive-through and everybody's getting, burgers and fries and shakes and things like that. So I would imagine it's just kind of further worsening the health of people who are eating a diet based on fast food.
yeah. I could keep talking about this. I want to, speaking of families and generations, as a military family, a spouse and mom in a military family, how has that life shaped your approach to your coaching, to nutrition and health? Has it changed it at all, or is it pretty straightforward?
That's a great question. I think it's helped me, and I've always had a focus on coaching with a lot of empathy.
Mm,
I originally, I guess I would say I started coaching because of my mom, but I sort of model my interactions with clients on what I think would have benefited my mom in her health journey,
hmm
and knowing that people are multidimensional. If somebody is coming to you with a weight loss or a health related goal, that's a fraction of who they are as a person and what's going on in their lives. And we need to have an understanding of that it's very easy to kind of keep things siloed and be like, well, I'm the fitness person, so you have to be as dedicated to this as I am, and I'm not going to accept any excuses of why you didn't get stuff done. You need to look at the entire person.
Yeah.
And I think being a military family has just kind of increased my empathy for understanding that everybody is going through something, and they're doing the best they can with what they have, and that my job is to help them see what they're capable of and help them develop the skills to have and to do and to be more, but that you don't have to make somebody feel less than in the process of doing that. So being a listening ear, I think, is a big part of it. A lot of coaches just want to, I don't want to say stay in their lane because it makes it seem like I'm getting out of scope of practice, but just want to say, like, let's look at your your food log, or let's look at your workouts, or let's assess this movement. But what a lot of people need is just an emotional outlet. They just need
Mm,
somebody who's going to listen to them and hear them, and empathize, like, yeah, things are tough right now, and you're doing a good job, and help mirror the the positivity. What's going well? How are you doing a good job? We tend to focus on the negative and where we're falling short. So I think a lot of coaching is kind of modeling for people or mirroring for people what you hope they will start to see in themselves. Being a military family, living in a military community, knowing that, when I walk to school pickup, half these moms have deployed partners, half these kids have deployed parents, and everybody's trying to do the best they can given their circumstances. I think that it just really helps you better understand why
mm.
things are hard for people.
Yeah, then that's a really unique situation. Obviously, military families are more prevalent in the United States than here in Canada, but I can understand how that would be a very unique situation, especially if one is deployed, and so now you're basically single parenting. But let's talk about that. Whether it's that, or two parents that are both working, and the kids are involved in sports. It's just a hectic, busy day. And I remember those days because my kids are both athletes. And so it was like literally a calendar on the wall saying, how much time do we have to eat? Which practice do we need to get to next? So for those families who are, once again, maybe military, there's deployment where there's only one person at home, or two-parent families where it's just extremely busy. How do you teach them the skills and make it simple? Because it's easy to read something out of a book and say, well, this is how you manage a busy family and still feed your kids, with healthy food. But, theory and practice are two different things. So what are the things that you bring in your coaching practice to a client that is a parent in a very busy home, or maybe they have a very busy job, they don't get home till after, the kids are home at school and they're trying to still manage meals and so forth. What's the approach to that for you?
That's a great question. That describes basically everyone I work with.
Right.
The first piece is permission to make things really simple and to scale back your expectations of yourself.
Right.
Generally, we contribute to the overwhelm by thinking not only do I have all this, this life stuff that I have to do, but also if I'm going to be a healthy person, now I have a laundry list of other things I need to be doing. So we really strip it down. What matters most? And generally, there are kind of some big rock principles that I think benefit most people: strength training, daily movement, protein, fiber, rest, etc. But looking at like what's lacking in your life right now, what matters the most. I have a client who, when she starts the day with yoga, she it just sets a tone for the day where she just feels like she's got her head on straight. And she's noticed that when she lets that yoga time get monopolized by work or by something else, it just starts this like really negative cascade effect. So for her, the thing that matters most to protect is that morning yoga session. And sometimes we make it shorter, sometimes we do it from the floor next to the bed, but when she protects that, it has a huge positive effect. So figuring out what matters most for you to feel like you're being, you're making healthy choices, that you're mentally sane, starting there, and then giving yourself permission to let it be really simple. I had a call yesterday with a client whose son is playing Little League, and the very typical, we have to be there at 4:30 and we don't get back until 7:30. When are we supposed to eat dinner? And what we talked about was, you're going to swing by the grocery store, you're going to get one of those bagged salads, you're going to get a rotisserie chicken, you're going to heat up a microwave bag of rice, and there's your dinner. So those are some of the really simple things, is just helping people see that it doesn't need to be complex or time consuming. And then the other thing that I think is really, really important that you mentioned is, we've got this calendar of who needs to be where, when, and what's going on. We have so much information at our fingertips that we just don't use to the best of our abilities. Most people are very structured and intentional when it comes to their work responsibilities and their family responsibilities, right? I know when I have a deadline, I know when my meetings are, I know when the kids have games, I know all of these things. We fall short of that when it comes to our personal goals and especially our health. We allow those to be more of an afterthought of, yeah, at some point this week I'll work out 3 times and I'm gonna try to eat healthy this week. And it's just this kind of haphazard, gonna cross my fingers and hope that things fall into place. But we have a pretty good idea of what to expect between our calendars and our lived experience in the recent past. So just a little bit more intention when you look at that calendar. Instead of saying this kid needs to be there and this kid needs to be here, we also say, what hours am I going to be gone from the house and what are we going to do for dinner? Instead of, oh, we'll have to figure out something fast and then boom, next thing you know, we're at the drive-through. A little bit more intention of, you know what, I'm going to throw some chicken in the crock pot so that we can have that over, we can make some quesadillas when we get home, whatever it is. Just that little bit of extra intention. If this whole evening is monopolized, when am I going to get a workout in? Does that mean I wake up earlier? Does it mean I do it during lunch? If somebody else were to look at your calendar, would they be able to tell that your health is a priority based on how you're mapping it out? For most of us, the answer is no. We would tell that our jobs are important. We would tell that our families are important. We wouldn't be able to tell that our health is a priority. So do the extra couple of steps with that and map out when those workouts happen, what those meals are going to be, what snacks am I bringing for myself, so that I'm not getting caught off guard by things that I could have known were likely to happen.
You used a word at the start of that statement. I used the word protect, and I love that word and how you used it, because when it comes to even in leadership, there's a book called Your Oxygen Mask First, and it's about taking care of yourself first as a leader so that you can take care of others, right? And I try to profess to the leaders that I work with that they need to protect some time during the week that is theirs, and it's non-negotiable. And but I love the term protect because you truly have to protect it, and you have to set boundaries. And even if there's something that comes up, you need to see how much you can, stretch that boundary without losing it, because once it gets lost, it never comes back, it seems. So when you have and I'm going to stick with families because I mean, obviously very busy, couple kids, sports, running around, trying to protect, but just in general, how does a parent, because I think parents and business owners are somewhat similar. As a parent, you're kind of running a business, running a family business, and you need to protect that time for yourself. And I try to tell my business leaders, like, you need to take an hour during the week, 3 times a week to, I don't care what it is, but it's your time. It's away from the office. The phone is off, and you don't, that's your protected time. Same thing with parents, protected time. How do you continue to protect that and not have it eroded by scheduling changes and things like that? Because and once again, I kind of go back to, and I'm sure you've worked with business leaders as well, but how do we protect that time? How do we make it our own? And what I see by our own, it doesn't mean like, me and the spouse went for a walk. I mean, that's nice, but it's like, I want it to be your time individually. So how do we protect that time?
That's a great question. I think it starts with how you're framing that time in the first place. We tend to think of it in terms of what it's costing us. Oh, this is time that's taking away from my family. This is taking away from my business. So, of course, of course you don't want to uphold that boundary because all you're looking at is the negative consequence of it. But the reality is, it's not taking away from those things. It is enhancing those things. It's
Mm-hmm.
improving everything
Yep.
in your life because you are at the center of that. If you want your business to thrive, you need to be in the best possible mental, physical, emotional condition to do that. And same goes for your family. You are a leader in your family. And if you're not taking care of yourself, what kind of example is that setting for everybody else? And not only is that teaching then your kids that, oh, I have to be this martyr, I have to self-sacrifice, but you're also not your best. We feel our best when we're moving our bodies, when we're feeding ourselves nutritious foods. And you can see that impact in your energy, in your mood, in how you interact with your family. So, sure, that might be 60 minutes that you're not physically with them. But if it improves the rest of the time that you are, where
Yep.
you're happier, you're more engaged, you're more involved, then it is so worth that trade off. So I think that's number one, is how you're looking at it makes a huge difference. And that
Sure.
becomes, yeah, this is truly a non-negotiable because everybody else is going to pay the price if I don't do this for myself.
Yeah.
And then I think it's important to give yourself some grace with figuring out what works for you right now. It's very easy to say, open your calendar right now and pick 3-hour time blocks, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 7 a.m. That's your time. It's gonna take a little bit of experimenting. You're gonna have experiences where you block off this time and then something really important comes up during it. And maybe you do kind of not protect it.
Mm.
But that doesn't then need to turn into this beating yourself up. Oh, once again, this is just something to learn from. Okay, that's not the ideal time for me. When would be a better time? I
Mm.
have a client who's working on taking short kind of mental health breaks throughout her workday. And for several weeks in a row, she kept saying, I'm going to do it and not doing it. And what we experimented with this week was, let's just practice grooving the habit, even if it's not at the time that you need it the most. So if you're finding that you're getting wrapped up in your workday and you just don't come up for air, and next thing you know, the day is over and you haven't done it, let's start really early. What if 30 minutes into your day, you took that 10-minute break? You don't feel like you need it yet, but what you're doing is practicing carving out the time for yourself. And then what if you shift it then a little bit further into the day, a little bit further into the day? Eventually, you will get it to exactly where you need it, but you need to be willing to kind of go through some trial and error. So especially with things like exercise, I always hear people asking, should I do it before work? Is it better after work? And it's like, whenever you do it is the best time. So why don't you try a few mornings? Why don't you try a few evenings? Why don't you try midday and see what sticks? Maybe you find that you're somebody who really thrives at a certain time of day. Maybe you decide, I'm going to be super flexible and just each week I'm going to do some life admin and I'm going to map out those. It's going to be different times every week. It doesn't matter as long as you're flexible in, exactly what it looks like, but you're committed to making sure that you are protecting, X amount of time by the end of the week.
Yeah, it still is tough. I mean, it's two great examples of how to protect that time. The thought that came to my mind is that business owners and parents are very much alike in that if they aren't taking care of their children, the employees, the business, or literally their children as parents, they feel this guilt, right? It's like, oh, I'm letting them down. I'm neglecting, my business, my employees, my children. First and foremost priority is my company, it's my employees. And I had a gentleman that I worked with that we were supposed to spend 4 hours together. We got rained out. It was an outdoor thing, and he immediately just went back to work. And I said, you were planning on spending 4 hours with us today, doing some health protocols. And he goes, yeah, but if we're not going to do it because we got rain, I'm just going to go back to work. And I'm like, you can still take this time for yourself. And so like I said, business owners and parents have this. It's this kind of like this all or nothing. It's like it either is going to happen or screw it, it's not going to happen. And I know you speak to that all or nothing mentality in your book, on your podcast. It's part of your language. I'm an all or nothing. I'm a yin yang person. It's either all of it or none of it. And I go whole hog into diets and things like that because I find that if I don't go whole hog, I won't stick to it. So I'm probably one of your best clients, worst clients. I'm not sure how to describe that. But let's talk about that all or nothing mentality. What has caused that, or is that just unique to individuals? And how do you get past that?
Yeah, great question. I think, like all kind of labels we put on ourselves, they sometimes serve us and sometimes work against us. And it's
Mhm.
just really important to recognize that you can drop a label when you realize that it's hindering you. So there are a lot of ways that being all in is a positive thing, right? You're really committed, nothing's going to get in your way. That's huge. That's really important. And especially I think sometimes in like a business sense, when you're all in, that means you are truly committed to seeing this thing through,
Mm.
to reaching whatever milestone, getting whatever done. And the beauty of it in that context is generally there's kind of a natural time when you can then take your foot off the gas, right? I got it to the point that I was trying to. I made an exit, or I was able to hire someone to help me, right? I temporarily I had to kind of be balls to the wall, and now I'm able to take a step back and kind of breathe. I think where health is different is that it's forever. It's this ongoing thing. So the cyclical nature of being all, then we end up paying the price with nothing. So instead of, I
Right.
think, so a term that I've started using is surging and cruising, which I think is a better alternative to all or nothing. There are times when you need to or you want to do more, put in more of an effort, get a bigger result. That's the time that you're surging. You have
Mm.
your effort dials turned closer to max, but you can't sustain that for forever. And the people who try to burn out, and then the pendulum swings the other way and they end up just so exhausted and so frustrated that then they're
Yeah.
doing nothing. So the alternative to that is that once you've surged, then you cruise. And again, that's just kind of the taking your foot off the gas. It's not backsliding into back habits. It's not regaining weight or becoming less healthy.
Mm.
It's you kind of taking a breather. So it's more of this like speed forward, kind of hang out there, speed forward, hang out there. It's
Okay.
so much healthier and more productive than trying to do everything. It was very tortoise and hare, right?
Yeah.
You do way too much too fast. And then instead of being like, oh, shoot, that was too much too fast, let me slow down and do less but keep going, we just stop completely. So it's just kind of understanding there is some trial and error involved. There are going to be times that you do too much and you can't sustain it. And that's not really a problem. What's the problem is what you tell yourself afterwards.
Mm.
Oh, this is what I always do. I always start something and then I quit. And this is just, I'm always going to be doomed to be this way. It's just who I am. Right. Well, now you've created a whole thing and now it's going to become self-fulfilling. So it's fine to realize, ooh, you know what? That was more of a sprint than a marathon, and I can't keep doing that as is. But what can I learn from it? What can I take from it
Yeah.
that did feel good? How can I scale it back to something that I can do longer term? So it's not to say that being all or nothing is always a bad thing. It's just
Mhm.
that if you're finding that you have this like really herky jerky these starts and stops where you feel like you're putting in a ton of effort and there's nothing to show for it, then that's not serving you.
Well, and this is where the synergies of your podcast and your knowledge and experience that you bring to the table and the effort over results philosophy is when I work with clients, and I do work with some athletes and I've even worked with some people. I'm not a nutritionist by any stretch of the imagination. I have some knowledge, but the advice I give them is stop thinking so much about the result you're trying to get and just take that first step and find those little daily habits that you know are going to lead you towards directionally towards a result, but not focusing solely on the result. So the example I'll give you, and this is very obvious, is someone who, let's say they're 300 pounds and they set a goal to get to even 270. Okay. They're on the scale every day. Right. And it's like, oh, I'm 297. Oh, shoot, I'm 299 now. And I lost 5 pounds. Now I'm down to 294, back up again. And there's that yo-yo effect. But it's because they're obsessing so much about the result that they're trying to achieve. And then they also think about, oh, it's because I had that extra, piece of toast. And then it's like, okay, stop obsessing about the result because it's going to get you to question your motives. It's going to get you to question the daily habits that you're already forming, which are good. Focus on the effort. What are the things that you need to do to move towards a result? Directionally correct. And I call it shooting the alligator closest to the boat. For this one person that I worked with, name's not going to be used. I was like, just stop drinking sugary drinks. How about that? One little thing, one little daily habit. Or even just getting to the gym, it's put your gym bag by the door. You don't have to go, just have it there as a little reminder. And you just develop these little daily habits. And I know I espouse Atomic Habits by James Clear almost daily, but that's does that work in your field and the clients you work with? Do you find that your clients obsess over, a goal they have, a result they're trying to get so much that they lose sight of what they learn along the way?
1,000%. Our listeners can't see how vigorously I was nodding while you were talking, but I am so, so aligned with that.
Mm,
And you're absolutely right. The majority of people that I work with have started off in that exact headspace of waking up every day just obsessing over the scale. And then you're right. And then sort of like drawing conclusions, drawing incorrect conclusions based on that. Oh, I had toast for breakfast yesterday and now the scale's up. I knew I couldn't eat carbs. And it's like, well, we're jumping to some conclusions here.
yeah.
Um, and I think, yes, it's important to know what the result you're after is, right? That's kind of your compass. That's how you know what the behaviors are to focus on. But it just is going to drive you crazy to focus on things outside of your direct control. It makes so much more sense to focus on the behaviors that you can do directly and also your thoughts and your attitude toward these things. Something that I swear by and I think is so, so helpful for people trying to make any behavior change is some form of a tangible, tactile consistency tracker where whatever that habit is, whether it's protecting, those 3 hours a week of personal time, or it's eating a certain amount of protein or a step goal or whatever it is, documenting that. The easiest way to do it, the one that I like the best, is printing one of those blank calendar pages off the computer and putting it on my refrigerator. And every day gets a check mark or a sticker or a smiley face, whatever you want. But it allows you to see your effort and your consistency in the things that matter is what is
Yeah.
going to get you the result. So instead of outsourcing that to, my bank account's not growing fast enough, I'm not getting enough clients, the scale's not moving down fast enough, you focus on what is directly within my control. Am I showing up to the
Mm,
best of my ability? Because very often people are putting in like a C effort and they're expecting A plus results.
right.
And we need to shine the spotlight on that disconnect that either your expectations are unrealistic and we need to shift those, or you need to be willing to do a heck of a lot more in order to get that outcome in the time frame that you have. But what we need to focus on is what are you doing to make this more or less likely to happen? And with our health specifically, we have dozens of opportunities throughout the day to either get ourselves closer to or further from where we want to be. And when you start looking at those forks in the road as those opportunities of, okay, if I have 100 choices today, what percentage of those was getting me closer to and what percentage was getting me further from? And am I just spinning my wheels and telling myself I'm doing everything I can when the reality is I have a lot left to give.
Yeah. I think it's, and I talk about, shooting the alligator close to the boat or just developing those small little habits. There's one coach, and the name escapes me, but he has his clients the first week that he works with them, and this is in business leadership. He goes, "Okay, I want you to make your bed every morning and send me a picture of it." He goes, "If you can't do that for 14 days, then we're not working together." And it was so interesting because it's true. It's about these little atomic habits, sorry, James, that, that we develop, or can we develop? Because there's so many things we do every day we probably don't recognize that we're doing. But
Mhm.
can you even just make your bed? Can like I have one of those, for supplements, I have one of those, Sunday to Saturday, pill things that holds each of them. And it's like all I have to do is pop it open and put them in my mouth. How hard is that? Oh no, I can't get through a week without missing at least one day. Right? And so we talk about those little habits, and nutrition is and movement are two of those things that we take for granted, one, and two, we have the hardest time doing consistently. And why do we take that for granted? Why do we take our health for granted? The fact that we can move for granted, the fact that we are able to, if you really want to make it a priority, you can eat healthy. Maybe it costs a little more, but I'm just saying, why do we take all this stuff for granted and put everything else ahead of that? Because, and that's where our habits get eroded, and then it makes it that much tougher. So I imagine some of the clients that you work with, um, you know, that's half the battle, if not most of the battle. Like they probably even know what they need to do. You probably have some clients where it's like, I know I need to eat less of this, more of this, and I know I need to move more. Yeah, okay. So those are the alligators closest to the boat. That's fine, but can you actually do it?
Right. The
So
first line of my
what?
book is I
Yeah,
know what to
yeah.
do, I'm just not doing it. Yeah.
There you go.
And it's, yeah. What's interesting is that people often say that as sort of like a final statement where they're just
Mm,
kind of throwing up their hands. Yeah, I know what to do, I'm just not doing it.
yeah.
Like, okay, well, why not? Like let's explore here.
Yeah.
Um, and generally what I think people default to is they assume they have some sort of personal shortcoming. I guess I'm not doing it just because I'm lazy. I guess I'm just not motivated. Other people must just have something that I don't. I don't have the willpower. And that's not it at all. You
No.
could look for evidence to the contrary in so many aspects of your life. Of course, you're not lazy or unmotivated. Look at the other successes around you. Look at your business, look at your career success, look at your family. You have so much evidence that you are not inherently a lazy, unmotivated person. So that's not the explanation. So what is it? Why aren't you doing those things? And that's when, kind of going back to what we were talking about before, that's when we get into the mental stuff. That's when we have to like do the real work of figuring out the deep answer to that. And sometimes it involves, worthiness of, I just don't believe that it's possible for me or that I'm deserving of my health or to be thin or whatever it is. Sometimes it's more surface level than that, and it's just that I'm not doing the planning. I'm just not in the habit of thinking ahead and figuring this out. A lot of the time it's that I'm not used to showing up for myself. I have, over the course of my lifetime, I have so many instances of saying I'm going to do something and then not doing it, that I've just eroded my self-trust to the point that I don't even, it doesn't even matter what I say because I don't trust myself to do it. So I think, going back to the example you gave about making your bed, that's exactly what, no matter whether you're health coaching or business coaching or doing, family therapy or whatever, so much of the starting point is exactly the same. It's taking those small opportunities to follow through and do what you said you would do. It's
Mm,
putting your alarm across the room and
mm,
not hitting snooze in the morning and proving to yourself that, because we develop these beliefs. We say, oh yeah, it's so hard for me to wake up in the morning. I can't get out of bed without hitting snooze at least 3 or 4 times. It's like we say it like it has no consequence, but the more you say that, the more that becomes your identity. Now I'm
yep.
the person who hits snooze in the morning, and now it's that much harder for me to overcome. So it doesn't matter what improvement you're trying to make. You got to start with just showing up for yourself in a small way. Can I make my bed today? Yes, even though I don't want to. Can I get up and splash some cold water on my face? Yes, even though I don't want to. And the more you show yourself, I'm capable of doing this, this small but hard feeling thing, the more you start to feel capable of doing something else. And the self-trust is at the foundation, no matter what the thing is.
I want to go back to our discussion on the psychology behind this because like a lot of the new apps, like I think it's Noom, and there's a couple other platforms that they're speaking more to the psychology behind this, and it truly is this. The psychology behind nutrition and fitness and health is grown exponentially in the last 10 to 15 years. Once again, I go back to, when I was younger, where it was basically just what you heard on TV and maybe in the newspaper, but the psychology behind it and that identity based habits that someone goes from, well, I want to be healthier to I am a healthy person. It's, I want my house to be cleaner. It's like, no, I am a clean, tidy person. So, how do you, especially where women are involved, because I think women potentially struggle the most with nutrition and health and really trying to keep up with that, especially when social media tells them every day, you need to look like this, and even young men are now experiencing that body dysmorphia. But how do high performing women and women in general let go of that perfectionism around food, body image, things like that? Like, how do you, if you were working with them, how do you get them to stop thinking that?
Yeah, it's tough. It's
Yeah.
ingrained in so many of us from a young age. And I think something actually this just came up recently with a client is sometimes the work is feels like kind of a tangent. And by that I mean this client was really kind of hemming and hawing. She had kind of two competing goals that she was wanting to transition to a plant-based diet and she was wanting to lose weight, and she was finding it really difficult to do both of those things at the same time. She was just spreading herself too thin trying to transition her way of eating with also, being in the deficit and eating enough protein and things like that. And as we were talking about it, she was realizing that she started following so many like vegan bodybuilding influencers on
Mm.
social media that she was just constantly bombarded with like, this is how you should be eating, and yes, it's possible, and you can look like me, and all of this stuff. And we realized part of what she needed to do was shut that down. She needed to unfollow the people on social media that were making her feel less than or making her feel
Right.
crazy. So I think part of it is we will deal with our own kind of perfectionist tendencies. We also need to be cognizant of the inputs that we're allowing ourselves to have. So if you already know you have perfectionist tendencies and you're following all of these, perfectly sculpted people on social media, that's not doing you any favors. That's just continuing to make you feel like it's perfect or bust.
Mm.
So starting with curating your social media feeds to be what you want to be exposing yourself to, I think makes a big difference. I'm a relatively small brunette, and I years ago briefly went down the rabbit hole of following all of these tiny blonde big implant bikini competitors
Okay.
where they just they all kind of looked exactly the same, and my feed was just full of them. And I would I it took a while to put it together, but I started feeling really bad after like my scrolling sessions, and I realized it's because that has like become the norm. I have conditioned myself to see the average woman as this like perfect blonde, tiny blonde with big boobs, and now I'm comparing myself in all the ways that I am not that person. So I think it's really getting a little bit in the weeds here, but the point being, I think it's really important to make sure that you're not worsening your own perfectionist tendencies by opening yourself up to whatever it is on social media. Remember that you get to call the shots. Who gets to come into your life, into your brain, into your eyes. So maybe that means unfollowing or muting or taking a break from social media to focus on yourself. And then I think, and this is where working with a coach I think can be really helpful, but perfectionists, and I have identified as one for a long time. I consider myself in recovery, but we have a tendency to pick ourselves apart and focus only on the negative, where we're falling short.
Sure.
And part of what a coach can do for you is help you shine your spotlight on the positive and help you just counter those two things. That sure, there may be places that you have work to do, and also there are things that you're already excelling at and doing really well, and helping you see that both those things exist at the same time. And also just the ongoing reminders that you don't need to be perfect. No one is. What you see on social media is a highlight reel, and what matters is how you are showing up in your life. Are you living according to your values? Do you even know what your personal values are? That's a good place to start. But starting to align yourself more with, what am I even telling myself perfect is? Is this an ideal that I don't even care to reach? And how can I live in a way that I feel good about, even if it's not picture perfect?
Yeah, it's tough. And like I said, it's not just women. I realize that's predominantly your clientele, and I feel bad because, especially for Gen Z millennials that grew up in the social media generation, like someone my age has obviously experienced, half or more of his life without social media, and back then it was like, well, I just compared myself to my friends that were in school with me, and now it's
Right.
like it's everywhere, and it reminds you, and that's one of the alligators you can shoot closest to the boat is stop following all these unattainable, and really probably bad influence. I call them bad influencers, bad actors that are telling you the things that work for them, or maybe making grand statements, so like an all or nothing statements that just aren't helping you. But that's tough. It's tough to weed through that noise. So I want to start to wrap things up a little bit because I know we're on a time frame, but one or two myths today, messages that are out there on social media that you're hearing from, say, other influencers, from celebrities, maybe it's a particular movement, I don't know, that is just, you just shake your head and go, why are we even discussing this? This is not a message that people who are trying to become healthy really need to hear.
Yeah. The first one that comes to mind is about fasting, and
Hmm,
specifically fasting and weight loss.
interesting.
In any women's weight loss community, there is like this cyclical conversation about fasting. When somebody says, I'm struggling to lose weight, what did you do?
Yeah.
What worked for you? I started fasting. And I know there's a more nuanced conversation to be had about the, other potential benefits of certain types of fasting. But when we're talking about weight loss specifically, the reason it works
Yeah.
is because you're restricting calories.
Sure.
Um, and so I always laugh when somebody says, oh, I started implementing 60-hour fasts. So you're not. So what happened is I stopped eating half the week. That's what happened. So I think like things like that, where we're so desperate for to be missing like the key, that we will just grasp onto anything. It's fasting, it's keto, it's balancing my hormones this way.
Yeah.
We I guess that's another one. Like the belief that we're missing some big thing. And you
Mm,
reference Atomic Habits, which is a book that I love. You're not missing any big thing. If I sat you down and I said like what's half a dozen healthy behaviors, you would be able to tell me them. And if I said, what has been your effort in those 6 areas over the last 6 months, therein lies the problem, right? There's no big secret that you just haven't been let in on. So I think, that's what a lot of the myths kind of revolve around, is everybody is selling or trying to convince that like this is the way, this is what you've been missing. And to come back to the title of the podcast, what you've been missing is the effort.
I want to discuss leaders for just a minute here, and I imagine some of the clients you work with are leaders in their communities, in their industries. What is one message, or maybe a couple of messages, you would have for people who are in leadership positions, let's say high performance leadership positions, where they're leading a company, leading a group, an organization, about taking care of themselves? And I keep referencing Kevin Lawrence's book, Your Oxygen Maps First, which I think is a very important book. What is your message to leaders out there in terms of movement and nutrition and what they should be doing to be the best leader they can be?
Yeah, I love that question, and that book title is perfect, because that
Mm,
really is the first thing that comes to mind for a lot of people is, yeah, you got to, put yours on first, because
yep.
then you can't help anybody else.
Mm,
If you're dead, which, literally is true. There are so many high performing leaders who dropped dead of heart attacks because they never,
yeah.
made this a priority. They never
Yep.
stopped. So, the way I look at it is, again, going back to what we talked about earlier of, how you frame your health, but it's not something that is taking away from your ability to be a good leader. It's enhancing, and it's lengthening your ability to be at the top of your game. You don't want to be this, kind of rise to the top, this shooting star, and then you plummet down just as fast because you couldn't sustain it because your health paid the price along the way. Once you achieve this level of success and notoriety and all the things, you want to be able to maintain that for as long as you possibly can. You want to have a legacy. You want this to be not a flash in the pan. You want this to be a long lasting thing that when you exit or when you leave, is on your terms, not because your hand was forced, because you were either no longer performing and you were asked to leave, or because your health dictated it. So I think that's really, really important. And the other thing that I always think about is I've worked with a lot of I don't want to say lower level employees, but people who are not leaders in their companies. They are,
Sure.
just the employees.
Yeah.
And I think leaders don't realize the huge opportunity they have to create healthy environments
Mm.
for their teams, for their employees, for the company as a whole. So many of the clients I work with feel like their healthy efforts are harder because of their culture at work. I always end up skipping lunch because I need to be on camera for my meetings, and they span from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. and I can't be on camera eating, therefore I don't eat. I'm just
Mm.
chained to my desk, right? There are so many ways that the work culture is making it harder for everyone to be healthy. And as a leader, you have such an opportunity to change that culture. You can lead from the front and you can make it the norm in your company to say, we eat our lunches, we make sure that our bodies are nourished, we take movement breaks, we can change this entire culture based on how you live your own life and the opportunities that you afford the people who are working for you.
Mm.
And then in turn, that's not just like out of the kindness of your heart. In turn, you're going to have a healthier, happy, more productive workforce who wants to stay with you longer.
It's interesting you mentioned the lunch thing. I worked for an organization where it was literally national and we spanned 5 time zones. So, to create national meetings or even regional meetings, they would be like, someone is working through lunch. Guaranteed. Someone is, sitting there between 12 and 1 but you're right. Like it needs to come from the leaders first. The example needs to be set. I think today's young business owners, and when I say young, like the millennials, and even some younger Gen Xers are seeing the benefits of that, of, even having a gym built into the building where, these people are, a locker room, some sort of fitness, a kitchen that's well stocked that maybe has, a breakfast bar at it for people who don't, just want to get out of the house and quickly come to work and they can eat there. I think all of those things go nicely together. Let's have some fun here. Let's finish up. Tell me 3 things that people need to get out of their kitchen, pantry, fridge that should not be in the kitchen, in the pantry, or in the fridge. Just get them the heck out of the house. 3 food items.
Okay. And to be clear, this goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning. Nothing is inherently bad or you need to
Oh,
abstain
come
from it
on.
for the rest of your life.
Okay.
But based on my experience in working with hundreds of people, number one, booze. So
Okay.
many people that I work with are struggling with their relationship with alcohol. They are
Yeah.
drinking more than they want to or than they know is healthy. And unfortunately, there's really no amount that is healthy. It's
COVID
in
didn't
figuring
help
out
that.
what's the lowest amount that I am willing to drink because none of it is doing me any favors.
Yeah.
But especially women and especially middle-aged perimenopausal women, there's the negative health cascade from alcohol. It's undeniable. You're already probably not sleeping enough or well,
Yeah.
and the booze isn't helping. And if you have any sort of like wearable tech that tracks your sleep and your recovery scores,
Yep.
you can see firsthand the nights I drink, I don't recover well, I don't sleep well, I pay the price the next day. Not only am I low energy and more likely to sleep in, skip my workout, not push very hard, my hunger and fullness hormones are all out of whack. I have more cravings. I'm less likely to feel satisfied when I do eat. They're just, and all of this is stemming from if I had just skipped those couple glasses of wine last night, my life would have been a lot easier today.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to drink less, get rid of the booze. Stop tempting
Okay.
yourself. Stop making your kitchen a minefield by having all of these things at your fingertips. Get
Yeah.
rid of them.
Okay.
Um, I'm trying to think if I can give like a very specific for the other two. I kind of like lump together all of like the hyper palatable snacky foods, like
Sure.
the kids' goldfish, the chips,
Mm.
the cookies, the things like that, that you tell yourself you'll just eat like a normal human being. And then instead, you find yourself hiding in the pantry when you're making dinner, shoving stuff into your face, or as soon as the kids go to bed, unwinding. And with that comes all the food. Again, if you do not want to be overeating and overdrinking things, stop bringing them into your home. So that's kind of the second category. At the very least, a couple tips if you're not going to eliminate entirely is buy single serving packages or portion them as soon as you get home into single serving baggies. Put them back in the original bag so they're not taking up extra space. Then when you reach in, you get one serving's worth. At least you're building in some opportunities to come to and be like, oh, okay, if I'm going back for more,
I'm
that's
still
a
grabbing
second
5,
serving.
Esther.
You might, and people do. And honestly, 5 might be less than it would have been otherwise, so it
Maybe.
could still
Yep.
be a step in the right direction. But if you're finding even that's hard to limit, then stop bringing them around
Yeah.
or store them out of sight and hard to reach so that every time you open the door, you're not confronted by it.
Okay.
So those are kind of the main two. And then for a third, I would say anything that is expired or not going to be eaten and is just taking up space.
There you go.
It's hard to find the stuff that you do want when it's hidden behind, all of the miscellaneous things that you've acquired that you're never going to actually do anything with. So toss them, donate them, just get them out of your life.
I'm diverting a little bit, but what's your take on sugar? Like white sugar?
I don't have a strong take on it, again, because I think so many people are so fearful of it and feel like it's, the devil's cocaine or
Yeah.
something. It's like, would most of us be better off eating less sugar? Sure. But do we need to take it to the extreme where we eliminate it from our diet? No. But and I guess like if you have trouble moderating, yeah, maybe you want to do a
Right.
30-day elimination and reset your taste buds and things like that. But overall, I just think you're barking up the wrong tree if you go down any of those kind of minor rabbit holes of like it's the sugar that's the problem. It's like, well, the sugar is a part of a larger conversation to be had. And if you're going all in on that, you're missing the forest for the trees.
There you go. There you go. Okay. 3 things that you should have in the fridge, kitchen, pantry.
Okay.
And you can lump things together. That's fine.
Easy protein sources.
Okay.
Protein, we know it's
What
important.
are those? I struggle with that so much. Easy protein sources.
Yeah. So the probably the top 3 I have in my fridge right now, I'll hard boil a dozen eggs, and
Okay.
those are just easy, pop in your mouth. I do a little hot sauce, a little mustard
There you
sometimes.
go.
Those are a super easy one. If you're really want to press the easy button, you can buy them pre-boiled and pre-peeled. They're a little bit weird and slimy, but if you can get over that, they're totally effortless. Deli meat, I'll just roll that up again, maybe a little bit of mustard, string cheese if you got it, but deli meat roll-ups, they're a great snack when you're making a meal, but you're really hungry right now.
Can I
If
interrupt you there, Esther? Sorry about the deli meat because okay, once again, just what I'm reading that now you're talking about deli meat like straight from the deli, like that's cut right off of the ham or the like a fresh turkey or chicken or whatever. Because when I think deli meat, I'm thinking of like the prepackaged, perfect circle salami slices or pepperoni slices or even some of the turkey that looks like it's not even quite real. Let's define between deli meat and processed deli meat.
Yeah, you can do. I mean, I have some of the processed deli meat in my fridge right now. It's kind of one of those things that
I
like,
guess it's better than nothing.
that's
Better than
exactly it.
eating
Like
something poor. Yeah.
it's so easy to really limit ourselves
Right.
by trying to do things perfectly.
Right.
It's like, sure, in an ideal world, if I was in a lab setting and I was eating only if I compared all of the data on all of the things, processed deli meat is not making up a large percentage of my diet. I have it there for convenience. If I eat, a few ounces a couple days a week, I don't give it a second thought. So, it's a personal choice. You can certainly take a hard stance and say, I've heard something or I've read some research and it doesn't feel right for me. Okay, fine. Nobody's forcing you. For me, it's not a hill that I'm willing to die on. It just in the grand scheme of things. What I think is interesting is like how many people will take that stance with like processed deli meat who also drink alcohol.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we want to weigh
There's the
the
alligator.
prob
Like which alligator is the most dangerous one?
that's exactly it. So
Yeah.
So, I don't drink, and
Hmm.
and I'll take my deli meat a couple times a week if I want it. But yeah, ideally, it's sliced off a chicken. It doesn't have all the preservatives and stuff like that. Sure, and it looks more more like the real food. I wouldn't argue that that's more ideal. But that's another one. Greek yogurt, I always have on hand. I
Mm,
really like smoked salmon. Just easy
mm,
things that when
yeah.
you're feeling snacky or you've gone too long between meals and you really need something between calls, you can easily grab and put in your mouth. So that's easy protein sources, I'd say, is one. For me, ice is another one. I'm much more likely to drink more water if it's cold.
I
For
like that one.
me,
We have an ice machine, so that it's always ready.
yeah,
Love that.
yeah, it just kind of a make or break, I think. And let's see, what's another good one is pre-cut and pre-washed fruits and or veggies and having them either on the counter or front and center in the refrigerator, just like we were talking about, kind of hiding the snack foods.
Hmm.
Those are easy to overeat and aren't providing you with a lot of nutrients. So you want to do the reverse with the stuff that you do want to be eating and does have a lot of nutrients. So if you have a cantaloupe, but it's just sitting behind stuff on the counter, you can't even see it, it's going to go bad and you're going to throw it away. So bring it home, chop it up, put it in the center of the fridge so that when you open the fridge, because you're like, am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Do I want
Yeah,
something? How about a few pieces of cantaloupe?
there you go.
Same, maybe you buy the pre-cut fruit salad or the pre-chopped veggie platter because you're like, you know what? I know from history, I'm not going to be the one who chops all this stuff up, but I do want to be eating it. So press the easy button. Give yourself permission to do that. And when we'll make a fruit platter after school and we'll just kind of have it out while we're doing stuff in the afternoon. I'm always surprised by how much gets eaten, right? If there's cherry tomatoes around, if there's baby carrots around, somebody eats them, and that's a really good one to round out our three.
That's a good list. I like that list. Specifically for women, supplements, vitamins that because I know you work predominantly with women and I have female listeners. So what are the supplements and vitamins that are like the must-haves on a daily basis?
Yeah, number one, go to your doctor, get annual blood work done. The
Okay.
best thing you can do is find what your body needs or doesn't need,
Hmm.
because largely, if you're taking something that you're not deficient in, best case, you're just peeing it out. Worst
Yeah.
case, you're ending up with too much of
Mm.
something, which is also a bad thing. So always start there. There's so much noise around supplements on social media. So many people making a ton of money on
Yeah.
selling supplements and convincing you that you need this, especially perimenopausal women. Oh, need this to balance your hormones. You need that. Might you need some things? Sure, but let's start with what you, as a unique individual, are needing. Generally speaking, a lot of us benefit from vitamin D,
Yeah.
just especially in the winter. We're just not, that skin's not getting any sun exposure. That's usually a pretty good one.
Is that the
Fish oil,
D3K2 mix though, or just D?
probably both, but again, I would check with your doctor. It's interesting
Sure.
to learn how supplements work together. I was taking something a while back that
Yeah.
had black pepper extract in it,
Hmm.
and I came to find out that it's like 10 times more bioavailable with the black pepper than without it.
Oh,
But
interesting.
if you look in the supplement aisle, it's offered without it also. So there's a lot of kind of this stuff that you're just like, am I taking it and it's doing something, or am I
Yeah.
taking it but it's like it's not available, I'm just peeing it out, that sort of thing. Another, fish oil, if you're not eating a fatty fish a
Yeah.
couple times a week, that's a pretty good one, just kind of generally speaking. And then the third one, creatine, I recommend for most people. It's very well researched. There's really no downside, I guess, aside from potentially seeing a little bit of an
And
increase
all
on the
ages
scale.
too. And it
All
apparently
ages,
it
yeah.
helps with dementia, reduction of dementia. It can help with reduction of mental health issues. I've seen that actually happen. I've seen people go on creatine
Wow.
and it's helped their mental health. And it's incredible. And for older people, they've already done studies and trails, and this is what I learned through Peter Attia, is that creatine actually helps with reduction of onset dementia in older people. It's incredible. And that's why, yeah, I would say creatine's kind of number one. And I think
Yep.
literally children can even have it, right? It was so funny because back in the 90s, it was like, oh, it was the bodybuilder muscle, powder that you took. And now it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And it's a
Yeah.
phenomenal supplement. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
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 And I would say, to be really on brand, again, with any of these supplements, the consistency is
Sure.
what's going to matter. I think a
Yeah.
lot of times we have, like you said, with your vitamin containers, like we have them, but are we taking them? And are we taking them every so often and then feeling like, oh, they're not doing anything? So figure out how you can stack it to something that you're already doing, which, is very Atomic Habits also. But figure out, does the bottle go next to the coffee maker? Does it go on the kitchen sink, like, or the bathroom sink? Where will I see it and be reminded to take it so that I actually get the benefits of it and I'm not just spending the money and not reaping the benefits?
Yeah. Esther Avant, what a wonderful conversation today. Thank you very much for being here. Let's tell everybody where they can find you. Obviously, esteravant.com. I know the website. What other socials do you have out there? I know you've got a book. Where can they find it? Let's promote you. Let's get people talking about it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, website has links to everything. I'm most active Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My handles are just Esther Avant on there as well. Both my book and podcast are called To Your Health, and you can buy/listen wherever you buy books or listen to podcasts.
Thank you for being on the show today. I hope you had a good time, and maybe we'll have you back on in the future episode.
Thank you so much for having me.